29,035 feet, the cruising altitude of a Boeing 747. 67 degrees below freezing, with wind speeds reaching upwards of 50 miles per hour. Known by some as the Perch of God, a childhood dream began and ended here. My name is John Krakauer, and this is my story. In March 1996, I joined an expedition to Everest as a reporter for Outsider magazine, led under world-renowned mountaineer Rob Hall. For a small fortune of $65,000, Hall promised me what no man could, the chance to fulfill an obsession. After weeks of acclimatization, on May 10, 1996, we left Camp 4 for the final push, the top of the world, the Everest summit. The lack of experience in our climbing party was glaringly apparent, but my faith in Hall and the unjustified trust I placed within my fellow climbers was enough to convince me that the summit was safely within our grasp. The loss of life that ensued was enough to rock me to my core. Years later, I ruminated upon this predicament. Perhaps if I had realized our mistake here, catastrophe could have been averted. Nearing the Hillary Steppe, I joined Anatoly Bucharin, a skilled Russian alpinist, one of the guides on Rob Hall's team. The technical part of the climb, the sheer 40-foot rock wall, presents considerable challenge to the seasoned climber, let alone the inexperienced clients on Hall's team climbing by my side. The use of fixed rope and harnesses are definitely a requirement. After fixing rope with the help of teammates, we climbed the tricky rock face and started up the final stretch. I wasn't hungry or didn't think to care. All I could think about was the ground above me, slowly passing beneath my feet with each lethargic step. At above 25,000 feet, each lungful of air only brings 1/3 as much oxygen. My starving muscles ached for more, but it was only to be harder the higher I go up. This is the dead zone. If anything could go wrong in Everest, it will happen here. At this altitude, bottled oxygen is your friend. Without it, your body functions at a slower rate, translating into lower body temperature, strength, and chance of survival. Mustering every last bit of resolve I had, I steeled myself for the final push, the treacherous voyage through the dead zone, to the summit of the highest point in the world. My thoughts were hazy and discombobulated. Everest had taken its toll on my body, my mental capacity was pitiful. But now was not the time for apathy, for I wanted more than anything else to reach the summit. As I struggled past the last rock face, the summit was in view at last. Pausing only briefly to take in the view, I turned back. Celebration was not a priority. As I made my way down the summit approach, I realized just how low my oxygen was. I called Andy Harris over to turn it down so I can conserve my oxygen. All of a sudden, I couldn't breathe. It felt like the mask itself was suffocating me. And then I realized that Andy, in his impaired mental state, cranked my oxygen to full, quickly draining the rest of it. Without oxygen, I could only hope to somehow struggle to pull myself back to camp. With strength that I didn't know I even had, I somehow made it back to my tent. I immediately crashed into the tent, but little did I know. 8 more of my fellow teammates were fighting for their lives in the coming storm, and at the end of it all, only 2 would make it back. Shortly after my descent, a snowstorm began to brew, quickly capturing the remainder of the climbing party. Rob Hall, our guide and companion, was amongst those stranded in the snowstorm. After becoming trapped, his legs froze, rendering him immobile. He called for help, but I knew I had no strength or power left in me to aid him. The guilt never left me, gnawing at my conscience, little by little, piece by piece. Knowing that my actions may have contributed to the terrible tragedy is painful to bear. The lack of patience, the excessive pride, the selfishness, the sheer stupidity of some of our decisions were my ultimate downfall, and my friends paid the price for this sin. I set out to climb Everest to prove something to myself and to conquer a childhood dream, but the mountain has taught me a lesson I will never forget.